Josh stood on the golden pastures of heaven. The last time he had been here, he had been bewildered by the emotions he shouldn't have. This was his home, and yet it felt so foreign to him. Michael hadn't restricted the seraphim to a particular area of heaven when Josh had told him how lonely he felt among the other seraphim. Michael hadn't given him any duties either. The archangel did in fact seem troubled by the lost seraphim himself. The Malachim weren't cold statues, but they weren't human either. They weren't what Josh had learned to know and love. He strolled towards the silver forest, yet the sound of birds did not reach his ears. This part of heaven was only populated by angels. Animals, being part of what the mortals knew as reality, existed only for those souls who enjoyed their afterlife. Heaven was a marble full of grace and beauty, and it was empty. Josh had never had a home as a servant of the heavenly throne. He hadn't cared for one. But now, whenever he thought about one, he saw Mark's apartment. He heard the noises from the streets and singing birds coming through an open window. Looking down to earth, he realized that his friend would celebrate Christmas all alone. Josh had never had a Christmas he would have liked to spend this time with his friend. His purpose had turned to dust the moment he'd left that human. He had cared for Mark. Mark had cared for him. He wasn't an unfeeling divine entity anymore. He couldn't imagine himself floating around the throne, guarding it until eternity while singing praise to the Lord any longer. Josh didn't move when a female angel with sand-colored hair and wings approached him. Michael told me to take you with me. He thought it might be better than wandering around without purpose. The seraphim nodded but said nothing more. His mind was still far away in Edinburgh. He followed the other angel down to earth. There, on a dark street, Josh observed tall buildings harboring dozens of apartments, busy streets and people caught up in their own lives. "Come," the angel with the sand-colored hair said when the seraphim stood and stared. He didn't like the noises or the feeling this whole place gave him. Garbage was piling up in the back alleys they walked through, with the occasional stray cat or dog looking for shelter and food. The smell of it vanquished any fresh air there might have been otherwise. "What are we doing?" Josh asked when the walk dragged on. "Fulfilling a task," his guide answered without any annoyance in her voice. "As a seraphim, your only duty was to guard God's throne, but the common Malachim has other duties." They entered a building consisting of many apartments. Finding an elevator, they got inside. "We are divine messengers, bringers of revelations and warriors of God granting justice, but we are also responsible for recording every mortal's life and his actions. We take care of the mortals, and sometimes we guide their souls to heaven." Josh knew Michael was trying to make him comfortable with his new life and his duties in heaven. Now that he felt, and since he didn't want to go back to not feeling, the tasks of the common angel would be what he was more suited for. Yet despite the idea of helping mortals, his heart could not rejoice. Getting out of the elevator, they went along the hallway until Josh's guide stopped in front of a door leading to one of the many apartments. With a soft motion, the door unlocked and they stepped inside. The bluish light of a TV was the only thing illuminating the home. Empty beer bottles littered the ground and the air smelled of stale smoke. On the couch in the living room sat a shadow of a man. On the table in front of him was the same mess as on the ground, apart from one small difference. The Holy Bible was also there. Josh noticed photographs of a happy family, a wife and a little daughter, but the apartment showed no signs of any other members. Walking around to the man, he saw that the mortal had passed out from the intoxication. Apart from the bottles, the apartment was clean. The man didn't look like the usual drunk. He prayed to God because he can't bear the grief of their passing. He prayed for relief, for a sign, even for death. "Are we to kill him?" Josh asked while a shiver ran down his spine. He remembered the days of bloodthirsty angels when God had decided on divine retribution as punishment for his enemies. And now, in the aftermath, he still thought with shock about it, even if back then he hadn't cared. We are to give him a sign that there are higher forces watching over him and his dead family. I hope it will inspire him to move on. A faint divine glow radiated from the angel, causing the man to stir. Confusion quickly wielded to awe when the mortal looked upon the figure in front of him. God hears your prayers, she said to him. Have faith. The man got up at once and fell to his knees. He wept bitterly while clinging to her robes. The gentle, merciful atmosphere was too much for his broken soul. He reminded Josh of Mark in a certain way. The vulnerability, the grim hopelessness, the guilt. Josh felt a cold stone form in his guts as he thought about the self-inflicted scars. Mark had been so broken when Michael had come to take the seraphim with him. What if he fell back into his old ways to deal with the pain? Josh's guide gave the man a few more moments of freeing tears before she decided that their work was done. Sending the man back to sleep, she wished him peace in his coming days and left. Outside, there was a soft drizzle filling the air, turning the city even more into a depressing dystopia. When Josh heard angry words from another alley, he didn't ask and just followed the sound. Josh, don't! But his guide was ignored as he raced along the narrow path. You got a problem? Barked one of the two men. The other was pressed to a wall, a knife on his throat. Yet before he could intervene and save the mortal from death, the female angel appeared in front of him. With the snap of her fingers, she stopped the time around them. We have to go, she said in a calm but cold voice. But he is in danger. Aren't we to protect humanity? We are to not interfere with mortal business. Revealing God's will to a mortal, saving another from death, where's the difference? His guide only stared at him with silent authority. Our task is done. This is wrong, Josh argued, disliking the angelic way of living more with each second. We are not human, she said. War, disease, murder is their way of living and learning. We are their shepherds, not their saviors. This task falls to the highest of judges on the day of Armageddon. But he is living now. Seemingly done with the discussion, Josh was taken by the arm like a little boy and guided back to heaven. Freeing himself as soon as they had arrived, he stormed off. The seraphim did not stop until he reached the vast emerald ocean, the deep green tainted by blood since the rebellion had been turned into a swampy color which reflected Josh's face. Sitting down, he drew the knees up to his chest and stared into the distance. If he would have felt back in the day, he would have loved heaven. Now, however, it didn't feel like home. There was a longing in his soul, and without being able to do anything, Mark appeared in his mind's eye. The old cathedral, buses, people, and cobblestones. After what might have been an eternity, someone stepped next to the brooding seraphim. I can feel your sorrow, and I heard about your incident. When Josh looked up, Michael was staring towards the sea. His face was calm, but Josh had the feeling the Archangel was dwelling in memories. Michael was a good replacement as God, but he wasn't God. He wasn't the benevolent, perfect creator of all life. Something was missing for Josh when their father wasn't around. In the old days, I often stood here with Lucifer, Michael continued. But he was far too free-spirited to remain in a box, too curious to stay away from the temptations held by the dark. There was no malice in those words, more brotherly understanding. I have learned many things since Father vanished, but the one thing I cherish most is that angels rebel from time to time. They grow human. And once that happens, they no longer belong in heaven, for their souls long for something I can't give. Their gazes met for a moment in which Josh saw a divinity he'd never experienced from any angel. Michael wasn't unfeeling, nor was he human. He was a shepherd of angels and humans. I thought your power might endanger humanity, but I see now you are wielding it well. When the next question was uttered, Josh's heart skipped a beat. Do you want to go home? I would love to, Josh uttered with new hope. Michael smiled and offered his hand. Then come, let's bring you home.